Okay, so now let's go over master materials and material instances. So first, let's go back into our material folder and let's right click and let's go down to where it says material and textures. And here you have everything that is related to the material and texture section of the engine. So we're going to go up to material because we're not really changing anything just yet. But what we'll do is we'll type in base and then underscore double M A T, MMAT, if you will. MMAT is a shorthand for master material. It's the same thing like if you do T in front of your textures, so that if you need to, in the content browser, you can just type in MMAT and then it shows up. Same thing if you do T underscore, anything that'll have T for the textures will show up in there. It's a thing that you add to the naming convention so you can easily search it and easily find it. But if you want to, you can change that to any way you want. This is just how I do it and how we do it in our current game engine. So let's go in here. And one of the first things you'll need to learn about master materials is this is what you would say about it's basically a parent. As a parent, there's going to be a child version of it. So let's bring in our textures like you would for any normal assets. Where are the... Sorry, I added in the starter content stuff, so it's kind of hard to figure out where everything is. Let's see. Here it is. So I made these base materials for easy use. Actually, here we go. So we'll bring these guys in. The reason why I have this is when you make these master materials at first, you're going to need something to fill in the slots for where you're going to have your albedo, your normal, and your ORM textures. You don't want to have something that's like a 4K texture because if, say, you don't use any of those textures, like you only use the albedo or the normal and not the ORM map, it's still going to be referencing that 4K texture. So it's good to make something that's a 128 by 28 so that the references that you're getting out of this are very small and not going to impact performance in any way. But I basically made these very simple, easy to use textures, you know, in Photoshop. So let me plug that into our base color, plug this into our normal, and then this is normal or ORM. So for the red channel, I just added white. For the green channel, I also added white for a very flat roughness. And then I added black to the metallic because this isn't going to be a metallic material. It's going to be a very flat dielectric. See? And then I added 50% gray because it is a lot easier to see things in detail in the light and in the darkness with a gray value than it is with a white value. So if I want to, I can, let's go back over here. I'll right click, and then to make an instance of this material, since it's a material, you click create instance, and then we want to change this naming convention to IMAT for instance material. So if we click in here, you're going to get a different window pop up, but nothing really shows up besides this physics material and parent. So when you make a instance material, it basically makes a child or a, in the hierarchy, a material that's based off of the original one or a parent. So this is going to be your parent material. So whatever we do to this parent material will automatically change any instance material from that. It's the same thing like any parent to child hierarchy. If you change the parent, it's going to change the child. So let's actually go back in here and say we want to have slots where we can add our own textures in if we want to. What you can do is you can right click on here and you can go to convert to parameter. Now, a parameter is a value that you can give to these master materials that can be affected in the instance material. So say you want to change a color value, you can add a slider to adjust things. It's you're adding in these little options that you can change things later on in the instance material. So right now I'm going to go in and I'm going to convert all these to parameters. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the name of these to what they're supposed to be. And then I'll type in, for this one, ORM. Now let's hit save. And now we actually have these parameter values showing up. So if I wanted to, in this instance, I can use any of these originals, or I can go in here and you can actually see every single texture that's currently in the game. Maybe I want to add in this new clay brick. And then let me add the normal map for the new clay brick. So now I have this instance that actually is brick materials. But if I want to, I can go back, create another instance. I'm at. We'll do 02 underscore I'm at. So now we have this. This automatically now will show up every time you make an instance. So let's go over here and we'll do this grass material. There we go. So now we have this grass material that shows up in here. But maybe we want to change some things. Maybe we don't want to just have just these texture ones. Maybe we want to change things, like maybe we want to adjust the roughness on the fly within the material itself, or adjust the color as well within the material itself. So some of the things that we can do is let's add a multiplier value. So we'll hit M, and what we'll do is we're going to make a value so that we can adjust the tint of our albedo. So we go right here, and we just did a normal constant vector 1. So if we right click on this, we can also convert to a parameter. And in this one, we'll change it to albedo tint. And then let's plug this into our multiplier. We'll plug in our color and then our base color. So you can see that it actually has already made it black, because just like in math, we plug in any value and times it by 0, it will make it 0 or black. So we hit save. Let's go back to our master material. And of course, it made it black, but we made this new albedo tint value, which actually, let me change it to albedo tint. Albedo, if I can actually spell. Tint. There we go. Hit save, and let's go back to our instance. So maybe we want to just tint it back up to a normal color, or maybe we want to make it lighter, so we can do 2 actually, and it starts making it lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter until it goes all white. Or you can even tint it down if you want to, so make it a more darker one. It still has the basic colors, but it darkens it to a normal value. If you want to change it up a bit more, instead of a vector 1, you can do a vector 3. This way you can actually add in any color you want. So let's convert this to a parameter again. Let's do albedo tint. And one thing what we're going to do now is we're actually going to change this default value, because if you already noticed, when we automatically opened up a master material instance, it automatically went black. It's because it defaults at a color. So when we make another instance, it's going to default to a certain value, and we don't want to have it to be black right off the bat, because if you're iterating and you're trying to just throw some materials in, you don't want to just automatically have this like black texture or something. It's not going to look good for testing things out, and just having something splashed on, it looks very weird and odd unless you are using it for that reason. So let's go in here and we'll add this albedo tint, and then we'll hit save. And there it is, actually at the bottom. So that's another thing you're going to notice. You're going to see how it will randomly sort these things sometimes because of the way the shaders are by nodes, or also by how we can actually sort it ourselves. So once I get done with this, I'll show you guys how to sort it. So now if we want to, I can change some colors. So maybe I want this to be a red brick, or maybe I want it to be a yellow brick, or if I want to, a cyan brick. You can change any value you want to. You can even add more than one on there, because these values are in a sense HDR, so they can go beyond the normal dynamic range of things. So maybe I can add some more blue into it, so it's more of a light kind of pink. You can even go to 5 if you want to make it more of a purple. But you can add in whatever you want to, and then if, say, you don't want this tint or you don't need to do any adjustments, you can always unclick, and it will lock out that parameter and just have these normal parameters. Same thing if you do same thing for albedo. It defaults, when you unclick these things, it defaults back to the original value of what it is. So let's hit save. And actually, let's go in here and we're going to do sorting. So all these guys are currently in a none group because this is what it default is to. So let's make a group for textures. And it defaults at 32 because 32 is a power of 2 bit. So if we want to, we can do, say, we can do it to 6 if we really want to. So this goes to textures and it sorts to 6. We'll do textures now because once you write out one of these groups, it will now show up in the drop-down menu for this stuff. We'll do 6. And then we'll do 6. So let's hit save and apply. And then now we have a textures group and we have everything else set up. But maybe we don't want ORM to be at the bottom and we want it to be, say, in the middle of albedo and normal. So these sorting priorities are a number that gives these things to a value. So if they're all the same priority number, it's going to change it to another thing like, say, alphabetical to the name. So if I want ORM to be before normal but still below albedo, I'll change albedo. Or actually, no, I'll keep albedo 6. I'll change ORM to 7. And I'll change normal map to 8. I'll hit apply again and save. And boom, now we have ORM in the middle of them. So you can organize these things the way you want, or if your team in production has a particular way of keeping these values grouped up, then by all means change it. So the next thing we will do is we'll go in and we're going to add another adjustment value. So we're going to add in, we want to adjust the normal map value. So let's do flatten normal. So what flatten normal does is it takes our value and it flattens it down. So right now we have it at 0. But let's change this value back up to 1 because we need to see how this thing works. So let's plug it in to our normal. We'll hit apply. And let's change this parameter to normal strength. And let's go back to our instance, and now we have normal strength popping up. So as you can see, actually, it flattens it because by default, what it does is by a value of 0 or 1, it flattens it down. So if it's 1, it completely makes it flat, or if it's 0, it doesn't flatten it at all. So now we have our normal strength back. But you can actually go in the opposite direction and make it stronger if you want, because it's inverting the value of it. But there's one problem that we have. If you're doing something like, say, normal strength, in the context of things, you want more value, like, say, if we go to 2, to add in more strength to the normal map and not making it weaker. So one thing we can do is, let's go in our master material, and if you hit O and left click, you'll get this node, which is a 1 minus. So what 1 minus does is it inverts your value. So say we want our normal strength to be 1. What this does is it actually changes it to black, and then it puts it into our flatness. So let's do apply. And look, we now have our normal strength to 2. If we go back to 1, it makes our normal strength. And if we go to 0, it makes it flat. See, you want to have these master materials set up so that if anyone comes in, they don't have to look at any kind of documentation. They can just go in and say, hey, I see normal strength, I should be able to strengthen my normal map. Or if I see albedo tint, I should be able to just tint my albedo. You want to have these things set to a context so that artists can understand right off the bat when they apply this to any prop that they do. So actually, let's go in and let's apply some of these instances to our props. I have 2 instances, so let's throw one here on Manny the Mannequin, and then let's throw one on this rock. Though you don't want to have all this grass on the rock, so let's go into our second base and let's type in rock. Let's do basalt. So let's change it to that, and then we'll do basalt again. Boom. So now we actually have a basalt rock material on here, and we have a brick material for both of these. The cool thing is that these are using the same instance. So if I change anything, like say if I get rid of the normal map value, it will change it on the fly to these guys without you needing to go into each material for it. Another cool thing is that before, when you added a, let's actually do a test material. So I'm going to duplicate this, change it to test, and let's go in here to our textures, and let's grab this brick and throw it in. So you see how it says shader compiling on it? Shader compiling I've talked about before, where it's basically the engine trying to think and apply these textures. And of course, the more complicated a material is, or the higher the texture, the longer it's going to take with compile. See, you don't want to have a lot of these materials compiling for so much, especially if you make a master material and it's used 1,000 times over by assets within the engine. One change changes everything. So there's sometimes when we have days where we open up the engine and say one of our engine artists decided to change how our base material for props is set up, or our environment props material. And if he makes one change, it's going to have thousands upon thousands of changes that we're going to notice right off the bat. So we actually have warnings put in just in case, so that no one does that, or if they do, they should be prepared for these changes. So we go in here, we hit apply, and of course you saw that shader compile. If this was a lot more complicated, you'd have like say 100 times over. But let me hit apply. Let's go back to our material, throw that on test, and here we go. But maybe I want to change some things. I was like, let me change our albedo tint. But we're not going to really make a parameter for this, because this is not going to be a master material. This is just going to be a one-off material. So we'll go back in here. We'll plug this guy in. And you already can see right off the bat that I've already made this change within the editor, but it's not showing up on here. So if I hit apply, there's going to be a shader compile, and then it does the change. Well, see, that's automatically a problem, because I need to iterate and I need to test this, and I don't want to keep typing in apply and then seeing the shader compile and then this or this and that. The cool thing is, if we go back here to our instance material, and I want to see maybe how does this look if it's black, I can go in right here without even applying anything, without even changing anything. You automatically see the change done. The reason why is that shader compiles are only to these master materials. Instances already have the values already predetermined. So anything you try to think of, it's already calculated that, because it knows in a parameter you have everything already locked down, and it has like the values pre-calculated. It knows that you can go to any of these color values, you can go to any of these values that you've predetermined, and you don't have to worry about it because it's already thought it out for you. This way, if you want to, you can iterate and test things out. Like maybe I want it to be a little bit darker for whatever reason, or even a little bit lighter. You know, right click on here, and then you can just adjust your tint. Or maybe you want it to be a little bit more red or subtly red or something. Without needing any shader compiles, you already have these things done. And think about this: if you have 7 people on your props team, 7 people in your environment, 7 people on your characters team, and they're all using this kind of shader for weapons, for anything, for set dressing, and you have 21 artists working on multiple levels and multiple parts of the game, you don't want to have shader compiles hitting them all, because when they all save these changes, the next person the next day is going to notice all these changes, and they're going to be locked out because it's taking forever for it to try and figure out. So the good thing is that when you have these material instances already set up, you don't have to worry. Everything's pre-done. You don't have to wait. So let's get back to our master material. So we've already added in a flat normal and strength, and we've also added a albedo tint as well. So let's add in another very useful feature. Say this isn't going to be for a prop, which will use a 0-to-1 texture, or a texture that's only used for that particular asset because it's been UV'd and textured and baked. Maybe we want to use it for, I don't know, let's say a world material, a material that's tileable, that you'll throw on any surface and can be used on any surface, like say that brick material. What if you throw it on a block or something, and maybe the sizes are a little off, like maybe the brick comes in, it's a little too big. We need to change the tiling on it. Well, instead of going to Photoshop or whatever you use to create that texture, you can actually go in here and adjust the tiling. What you do is you right click, type in texture coordinate. So texture coordinate is the node that you use to adjust the tiling. So if you plug this in, you can plug this into the UV section of any of these textures. And let's go here, and let's go here. Let's see. Just do. Okay. So now we have this texture coordinate node put in. If I want to, I can adjust them so it will actually double. So if I hit apply and hit save, well, now the problem is that it did double the tiling on here, but I can't change it. I can't do anything about it. There's no way I can adjust these tiling on the fly. That's because what you need to do is you need to hit multiply and then add a value to it. So let's bring this guy back. So the cool thing about this also is you can actually adjust either the U or the V. So the U is the left to right, and then the V is the up to down. So you can adjust the tiling, say maybe you're using a rectangle shape and you need to tile it in a certain way so that the brick looks normal, but because of how these default assets are made, the UVs are squashed. So you can actually adjust the tiling on here if you want. But maybe you don't have that as a problem. So if you want to, you can just do it this way, or you can actually go in and actually use an append vector on here, and you can break out 2 values and say this is the U and this is the V tiling. So let's do 1 as our default value on here, and then let's plug it in. There we go. And there we go. Now let's change this to tiling. Another cool thing you can do is you can actually even set max values for it. Like say this guy, you don't want it to be able to tile more than like say 5 times because you'll see the repetition of it. So you can go in here, you can actually say this is the max of 5. That's as far as you'll go. And then you can have the value set to as a minimum of 5. So let's hit save. Let's go back to our base material. And as you can see, we now have this tiling feature. And you can see that instead of it being like this where there's no edge on either side, it actually does have one because it knows if I pull this all the way back here, it ends at 5. And if I pull this all the way back, it goes to 0. Now, having this doesn't automatically mean you can't go past it. You can actually go in here and type in 6 and it actually will tile past 5. But for context sake, you can actually, go back and forth and tile like this. That way it makes it easier and shows the artist that there are constraints that need to be done. But as you can see that I've already adjusted the tiling, I've adjusted the normal strength on here, and I've also adjusted the albedo color without needing to go back and forth and wait for a shader change or anything like that. It's probably one of the coolest things you can have.